much. Okay, so we're all set for that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start, and we'll call the meeting to order here at 6:02 on Monday, November 9th, and welcome to everyone. And as a reminder, our meeting is being recorded, and by participating in the meeting, you're acknowledging your consent to be recorded. And pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and his March 15th order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Education Subcommittee of the Wachusett Regional School District Committee is being conducted via remote participation, the greatest extent possible. The meeting is being broadcast live or streaming on HCTV and is being recorded so it can be rebroadcast. And as a reminder to all of us, if we need to use the chat, whatever's in the chat, that we'll make sure we'll read it out loud for the public. But do try, you can try the raise hand. I'm not very good at following that chat bar or the raise hand. So if any of you in the audience see that, or any of you participants see that, just go ahead and call and say, I'd like to speak. We're a small enough group, we can do that. And just so the viewing audience knows who's participating, we have Deputy Director Burlow from the district. We have Evan, got to learn how to pronounce his last name, Schackenbach, which I don't think that's the way I pronounced it correctly, but he's taping for us from HCTV. We have Krista Bennett, who's a school committee member, and Sherry Haber, who's a school committee member, and Lauren Kirschenbaum, the same, and Linda Long-Valil. And we have Director Keenan, and then we have Bob Imber, and then we have Deirdre Shapiro, and I think that's it. Is that the extent? That's all I'm seeing on my screen, so I'm thinking that's all we have, unless there are other people. Not very good at using the Google, at our Google Meet. I can see on our list, we have a few more maybe. Nope, that's, and then who's, and we have Jenna Tibbetts.
Yes, so, and I'm on the e-board.
Okay, so, all right, from the WREA. Okay,
yep.
All right, thank you. All right, and that's it, I think, on the list of participants. So now what we'll do is go on to our agenda. And the first thing we'll do is an approval of our minutes from our September 14th, 2020 meeting. So I'll take a motion.
So moved.
So we had okay, so we Member Imber moved it, and then Member Haber seconded it. And I'll give you a minute if you want to look those over. They were in the documents that were sent to us. Does anyone have anything that they would like to discuss from those minutes that needs to be amended? Okay, so we'll take a vote to accept the minutes as presented. And we have, so Member Bennett?
Yes.
Okay, Member Haber?
Yes.
Member Imber?
Yes.
Okay, Member Kirschenbaum?
Yes.
Member Long-Balil?
Yes.
And Member Shapiro?
Abstain.
I abstain. And then I vote yes. So those were one abstention, but the motion passed, so the minutes are approved. And for our agenda today, we were going to be discussing the district indicators and benchmarks, and then looking at policy, continuing on with that. But there's an item under new business. I'm wondering if we can take a look at it, and it's from the Deputy Superintendent Burlow would like to present some information to us. He sent that's relevant to tonight's presentation that he thought would be beneficial for all of us to hear. Is there anyone opposed to taking items out of order on the agenda? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it on. Whoa. I didn't see it on my agenda.
Okay.
So what are we talking about? Because the indicators are important, and also I'd like to get some sort of sense about why this is more important and how long the conversation is likely to take.
So Bob, maybe I could jump in here. I sent a email out early this afternoon with some resources, including some MASC model policies, and one of those was a link to a excerpt from Daryl's presentation for tonight. And the reason that I reached out to Christina about this was I thought that with the number of slides Daryl's going to go to, and in talking to him, he said he's going to have to move quickly. And there's some things in here about how we're looking to do education with kids in the hybrid model that I thought this group might want to unpack a little bit. So that's why I reached out to Christina to see if that could be an option for tonight.
And I didn't get out. I didn't take myself out to get out of answering the question. I hit the wrong button. But yeah, so I didn't give it that preface. Sorry. So it is really to look at some of the information that Bob Berlow just talked about, so that we're prepared for tonight's presentation. And we certainly don't have to take this on our plate, but it would probably be beneficial to hear this information.
Could we carve out a limited amount of time, unless we feel we really need to extend it? Because I mean, I just think we've been looking at district indicators as an issue for years now. And I think we really do need to focus on that as a topic, but there may be, you know, a more timely issue here. And so I'm willing to certainly consider that.
Yeah, and Bob Imber, I don't know if it was the last meeting or if Bob and I talked about this separately, but we had discussed probably the need to have a meeting like a meeting outside of our, before the meeting, so that we could have a period of maybe 2 hours or so where we could go through and really look at these district indicators and other things that are coming up on our plate. And you are so right about the district indicators. And just to make you feel a little bit better, while education is often, you know, how we have so much on our plates, to use your phrase, we're actually leading the charge here with these district indicators and getting them on our agenda. So we won't let them go. I think we're going to be the model. We are going to be the model for the other groups getting these together. So I think you're, you know, maybe Bob Berlow, do you think like 25 minutes, 20 minutes, like maybe till 6:30, or and then we can evaluate to see if we want to continue or if we want to go back to our agenda. Does that make sense to people?
I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay, so maybe and that gives him 20 minutes, and for us to have 20 minutes to hear what he has to say. And if at that point we want to continue, we can say, let's move on. Or we're done, let's go back, let's go to our agenda. We'll hear more tonight. It's a lot of pressure, Berlow. All right, so I'll set a timer and we'll give you the floor to, are you gonna share? It looks like you're getting ready to share screen or documents with us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me get out of this. All righty. So you do have an electronic copy of this, and what I want to do now is just to kind of go through some of these with people so that you can see what's going to be presented tonight and maybe be able to ask some questions. And Bob, I do agree. I know that the indicators are a very important undertaking that we need to do. This is, in my estimation, a little bit more timely, and so that's why I reached out to Christina to get this in here. Let me start with the district instructional goal, and we created this to try to let teachers as well as parents and students understand what it is that we're trying to focus on. It's our intent as a school district to provide all students, independent of their mode of instruction, and by that we mean whether they're in person or they're remote, with daily, high-quality, effective instruction aligned to the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. And the instruction is focused on depth of understanding, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. And that's based off of our strategic plan. That's where some of that came in. But it's to try to let people know that things really aren't different just because our way of learning is very different right now. Were there any questions or comments people wanted to?
Well, yes. I mean, I think to say that our education is not different is, I think because there's a fair amount of, there's a less time spent on education, in that sense, it is different. So or certainly less time spent on synchronous education at the very least. I think one has to say it is different. I guess the question is how much.
So Linda, I agree with you that the mode of instruction is very different, and it's also changing week to week because we're in person and we're remote for some kids, and for other kids they're completely remote. That is very different. However, our goal is to follow the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks and to move forward with students in terms of their grade level standards. And that's the same as it was before any of this. So that's what I meant by the same.
Okay.
I'll move on. Just yell. I don't see anybody because I'm presenting, so just feel free to chime up here.
Bob, just quickly, you might want to hit the present button just because it'll make it more visible for viewers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brendan. So the next thing that we have for slides that'll be shared tonight is the structures that we have in place to support learning. And at first, these are just some bullets of some general statements here. It's been brought up before about time on learning, and we want everybody to understand that we are committed to meeting the hours that's put forth by the Department of Education for time on learning, 8:50 for elementary and middle schools, and 9:35 for our high school. And our schedules have been designed to meet those hours of learning. Our classrooms are organized, whether you're approaching it in person or whether you're approaching it virtually. And we've worked with our staff to receive training around Seesaw, which is an online platform that we're using for the primary grades, that's preschool through grade 2. And it's Google Classroom, the platform we have in place for grades 3 through 12. How to organize files and materials so kids can find them, parents can find them. We're committed to providing a variety of learning experiences each day to students to make sure that they're not on their computers throughout the whole day. So even though they might receive an assignment, let's say that the student is remote, they might receive an assignment via Google Classroom, which is online. All the assignments ask the student to be online all the time. So for instance, just the other day we were working with the phys ed teachers, and one of the things that was shared with me after the meeting was the fact that maybe the assignment is for the student to complete so many minutes of an activity that occurs outside, and it would be completely independent of being online.
Bob Imber, did you have a question? Bob Imber has a question.
Yep.
Bob, I'm just wondering if we can focus our discussion on those areas that you think might not be boilerplate and more potentially contentious.
Sure.
Or that you truly need input on.
Okay, absolutely. I think here the big thing, and this is where we're still working with teachers, and maybe some of you are wondering why we don't have more details in some of these. These are kind of generic statements, and the reason they're generic is we're still working through negotiations with our Teachers Association to come up with specifics. So these statements are purposefully kind of general in the way I wrote them, and then that's the reason why. This is some of the structures that we have in place in terms of not our overall themes of what we want to do, but in terms of some of the programs that we have in place. We've really expanded the use of a single platform to get students to be able to log into programs, including parents can come in and see that's where all how the students access these programs. There's instructions on the website for that, and that's clever. Seesaw is new. We last year used Google Classroom across all our grade levels. We found that there were some problems with students being able to engage with materials, especially in the lower grade levels. So that's why we have brought Seesaw online. It's a online platform just like Google Classroom, but it's got more of an elementary focus to it. New this year is we've expanded the number of licenses for STAR assessments, and we're going to be using that to assess where students are at this point in time, identify any particular areas, grade level content that there's gaps in, and then we'll be able to set goals and monitor progress through repeated use of the STAR assessments. So that's one thing that's new, and we'll be doing that. That could be something that parents might reach out and say, what do you mean my kid has to take this online assessment on Tuesday? It'll be that we'll set up certain windows of time where we'll be asking students to take the STAR assessment. We'll be guiding them through that, and then we'll use those results, as I said, to not only set a bar from where students will improve from, but also to monitor the amount of progress that's made over a period of time. Any questions on this slide here?
We have a question, another question from Bob Timber.
Thank you.
Yeah, so sorry, I don't mean to be dominating this, but I'm wondering how well STAR assessments aligns with what we're teaching, and to what extent would teachers be more concerned about STAR assessments than and its goals and what it's assessing versus what faculty are trying to achieve and what the state is trying to achieve. It's an alignment question. Thanks.
Yeah, we looked at several products, Bob, and this is the one that with our limited resources, we decided to move forward with. It's used by other school districts, and some very close to us. It seems to be something that you can customize a little bit as a user, an adult user of it, to set what the goals are, those types of things. It gives us that unbiased look. So rather than being maybe biased potentially by the way a teacher creates an assessment, this is something that's independent of that. It is aligned to state and national standards as well. So it checked off a lot of boxes for us. It's relatively easy to get data and to access data and to interact with data if you're a teacher too, which was key, I think, to where we are right now with our use of data at Wachusett.
Okay, we also have a question from Linda. Oh, you're muted, Linda. Linda, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I've heard teachers in the past raise concerns about time spent on assessments versus time spent on learning. I actually think assessments are good, especially since there are so many concerns about what kids are actually learning. But what are your thoughts about the time on assessment versus time on learning?
Linda, I think that's an argument where we would have, no matter which year we chose to implement any of these things. In this particular year, we need something that's granular enough to let us know concretely what each student has mastered from the previous year's content. It's really essential, I think. And I think most teachers would agree that they need something that's going to tell them relatively quickly what the student has not mastered and where they're falling down. And then we can adjust to kind of add supplemental instruction. And then we need to know, is the student now mastering that material, or are they still having issues? In other words, as we monitor the progress that the student's making towards mastery, what do we got to do to support that? Some students are there, some students are still having issues, so we'll have to change it up and still support them.
Thank you.
Sure, Linda. So more structures, but now we're getting a little bit more detailed. Here's some of the programs that we're putting in place this year that were not here last year by and large. Lexia Core Reading is in place. We've just expanded it to include grades 4 and 5, so it's in place for grades 1 through 5 across the district this year. It's a program that students go in, and based on their individualized needs, it differentiates what it's showing the student, and you can set goals within there. You can also see the trajectory in terms of how the student is doing once they've been in it a little bit of time. In Sync is a new program that Eureka Math put out. It allows for students to interact with the Eureka Math consumables and worksheets remotely. So that's something that we're very excited to be able to add, and that's brand new. We just some of these we're just getting on board. Some we've already done training on. MobiMax is another platform to help students that maybe are below grade level to receive some additional interactive and sort of engaging activities to get them back and involved back up to where they are at grade level. It motivates students. The activities are kind of fun and exciting. And it also has ways to assess students so you can monitor how well the students are doing. MathSpace was asked for in some of our middle grade math teachers. It's an online program that does two things. It will challenge students that maybe are at or above grade level, but it also provides a wealth of support for students who are struggling with grade level content. Two programs that were asked for from our high school, Science to Go and Pivot Interactives. This is a way for students to still have interactive lab experiences while they're remote. The big challenge we have is when they're in school, everything that gets touched has to be completely cleaned before the next student can come in. So if you just think of a microscope, for instance, not only might your eye be touching the top as you're looking through it, but you're touching the bottom and focusing. You're using slides, maybe you're using some tweezers or something to move something around, or a dropper. Everything has to be cleaned in between student usage. So this is a way to get students to still have an interactive experience with lab, to collect data, to analyze the data, and et cetera. All those pluses to having a lab experience. Book widgets and tumble books. These are providing us with a way to access electronic books, books that we typically read as part of the curriculum, some classics as well, and to have it so that students can access these electronically. It's also a way to create interactive lessons that engage students in what they have read. Screencastify is our video editing tool, and by us subscribing to it, teachers can record a video for longer than 5 minutes, which is a big demand, was to have us have more than 5 minutes of video, which the free version had. Pear Deck is a way to take Google Slides and provide interactive experiences in there, pausing them, having kids answer questions. Based on their questions, the student can go on or go in a different direction inside of it. Edpuzzle is a way to take video clips and turn them into interactive experiences. This can have students answer a question in the middle of a video, so it would stop the video. It allows you to edit videos, to also collect student responses in real time as they're watching the video. So it's a way to take something passive, watching a video, and turn it into an interactive experience. So we did a lot of work. We only had so much money available. We tried to maximize what it is that we're getting, to go across multiple subjects as well. And that was really the challenge that was in front of us. And I think these are the content and the products that we put our money behind. But I think we kind of met that need, which was to not have it be dominated by 1 or 2 subjects or 1 or 2 grade levels. Questions around these new apps in here?
So my question, Bob, is not related necessarily to these apps specifically. I think that this is a fine list. It's pretty comprehensive. I can see how it can assist in multiple curricular areas. But more to the point of technology, and how do we have the technology both in-house for synchronous days and at home for asynchronous days, and for our remote learners? How are we servicing them? I know that's beyond the, a little bit beyond what we're doing here, but I can't help but ask that question. What are we doing for the technology support? And I know I teed it up for you right there.
Yeah, you were my setup, to get me to the next slide. So let me go through this a little, Laura, and then I'll answer your question as I kind of go through this.
Deirdre also has one for after. I don't know if you want to ask her after Deirdre or now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're going to go into the next slide, I kind of want to talk back about apps before you jump over there. So I don't know very much about specifically these apps as far as like whether or not they're being used for like the older kids. It sounds like they're being used for the older kids. And I'm sure that there's being training for the teachers on how to use these apps and how to set up their classes and stuff like that. But I'm actually kind of want to kind of put it in your head that if there's something that's going to be introduced as a new app for the elementary level students, if there could be some sort of training provided to the parents or you know, support staff of the children, because I learned Seesaw on the fly with my kid, and I kind of feel like maybe I'm not using it right. It's because it's not very user friendly, and everyone says it is, and I really don't find it. So I'm wondering if I needed some training on that, you know. So maybe the older kids can probably pick up these things and use them quicker, and they don't need their parents to know how to do them. But I'm suggesting at the elementary school level apps, maybe there should be a parent training as well. Parent guardian training.
Yep.
You know, so think just to kind of put that in your head when you're rolling this stuff out.
Yeah, and I'm glad you raised that. So what we've done is we've created on our website the Technology Help Center, and that was set up for students and parents, and in it are embedded some links to different things. In some cases, the parents would have to read some stuff, and in some cases it's a video. But what you just did put in my head is maybe we're not doing enough for parents, and there should be some sort of recorded video where we actually talk through and show somebody how to use it here at Wachusett. So that I absolutely can chase down and put that in there. And our Tech Help Center is right off the main website. And I think there might even be a link here in just a minute that I could show you what it looks like. So
yeah, Bob, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Deirdre.
I was just going to say like a tips and tricks type thing.
Yep.
But also keep in mind the other thing too is that like I'm using Seesaw on my phone, so you need to actually kind of like include both, like not just the mobile app but the computer app. So there's differences on what it looks like, and so I realize that's where I'm saying like you kind of rolled your eyes like, oh, that's a big ask, and I understand that because the timing, we just don't have time to learn this stuff.
Yep.
But
And that's a weak spot to many of these is when you access it via your phone, it's not going to look the same. And in some cases, it's almost impossible to click on a box or to see it. So that's a known issue to many of these apps here. So we good point. I'm glad you brought that up because we purposely did not try to go down that road because they're telling us, unless you're using it on a phone, then you're going to have some issues. It's not going to look the same and all this. So thank you.
And I'll make a comment, and then Bob Imber has a question too.
Sure.
I just say, like, from the technology help, when I just went on to the website, it's kind of just in a list of remote resources. We might even want to make that a little more prominent for parents that, hey, here's the technology piece, so that they know to go there. And maybe even in communications with families, just a reminder that we have that tech help available to them. I know Carol reported on how many people had access that, but just for constant reminder that there's help, because I think parents may forget or not realize that they can reach out for some assistance, and even offering ideas like what Deirdre just did. I'm sure others are probably asking for that too. Bob Imber, you had a question, and it is our time as well, so we can assess if we want to continue on.
Okay, so my question really is, and I've sort of raised it before, but it seems timely. Do we need additional staff to support technology at this point, and any other area like custodians and those sorts of things? Because I'm just thinking that it may be hard to do, but the question is, if we're going to be effective with this, do we need to have other folk who can help parents with this types of technology, and teachers and kids?
Bob, that's a great question, and I'm glad you're asking that. Here's the deal. Let me tell you how it is right now, and then maybe you can make up your own minds as to the answer to that question. So in terms of supporting and training staff, that would be either some people in the technology department, or it would have been people that we had for curriculum. We've let go one of our 2 curriculum people as part of our cuts to get to tier 2 reductions. So that's been cut in half. The person we have on board is primarily an early education person and has a literacy background. So when you see in a lot of these math programs and everything, I've asked her to step up, and she has. She very much has stepped up, but she can't run all the training in here. In our technology department, here's an example. We're working on the website and providing teachers and staff and and parents with more resources and links. All that had to come to a halt in order for us to work on bus routes the last week and a half. And so that's just consumed the tech department. If we had somebody that was extra, Bob, as you said, or an additional person that we could dedicate to one of these roles, we certainly could be doing a better job. When you look at this list that's in front of you here, there's a lot of different programs in there, and everybody, as I'm talking to either department heads or teacher leaders, they're saying, yeah, we're going to need training on this, Bob. We're going to need training on this. In some cases, I can buy it from the company. In other cases, the company is saying, yeah, you just look at resources that are out there. And as you've mentioned, Deidre, even with parents, it's nice to have something that's customized for the users that we have here, rather than people reading through or watching some YouTube video on how someone else in a different state's using it. So that's some of the frustrations that we're running into. Is it seems we just can't finish the job to the level that we want to do for us here at Wachusett, and we have to move on to something else. It's very frustrating right now, and the people that are in these different roles are pretty much flat out just trying to keep up with all the things that are on fire, never mind planning and polishing and getting it to be the way we want it to be.
Right. So how do we move that forward and get the personnel, even short term, that we need to give support in these areas that we anticipate?
Bob, I think it's putting a push to hire additional staff. In terms of technology, we need technology integration specialists, and these would be there to work with teachers to train them on the back end of these programs, to train parents and students on the front end, the user end of it. We also need curriculum people in there to make sure that the assessments, the teachers understand what the assessments are really telling them and what they're not telling them, how to use the assessments to set meaningful goals for students, and how to check in and maybe revise what we're doing instructionally so that we can meet students better where they are and not outpace them and have it be a goal that the kid's never going to reach. So that's really what we need.
Okay, but that's an administrative responsibility. School committee doesn't really hire those individual people.
No.
And so the question is, why is administration not pushing this and a narrative that says these are people we desperately need, and that's why we've hired them? Because I'm just really concerned that we are not sort of in any way ahead of a curve and saying, what do we anticipate the needs are? And here we clearly see what they are, and we're behind the game, and getting the folk we need, at least short term.
Bob, I think the reason that there hasn't been action taken here is in this time right now, there's a little too many unknowns. So you need to have brave leadership in order to not be just stagnant and not making any progress. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say that we're talking about hiring 2 technology integration support people and maybe 1 curriculum people, a couple $100,000 in salaries there. We also don't know exactly how much we're going to have to spend on protective equipment, PPE, for the rest of the year. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. We're trying to buy at least 2 months in advance. We don't want to spend all our money on that in case we have to go remote, but that's what we're trying to do. So some of these larger, unmanaged new expenditures can lead to inactivity, because in order to spend that money on salaries, it requires you to be brave as a leader and make those decisions. From where I stand, I certainly advocate for these things. It's been known that these are what our needs are right now in terms of teaching and learning, but there's other things that are out there as well. And those are just 2 things. We don't know yet about transportation costs, the true cost of that. We still don't have a budget from the state. So there's enough uncertainty in there that it can easily lead to inaction, Bob. And that's all I can say tonight, based where we are right now.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. So thank you very much. So we're at that point to ask if you guys want to continue on. We were getting to the question about technology here. You want to continue? Is there anyone who says, I don't want to do this anymore and I want to go back to our agenda? Okay, so I suppose we'll keep going. Bob Berlow? Oh, Bob and Burr, yes?
Again, I'd like to focus on what are the key issues. I mean, staffing is a key issue that we can focus on and talk about and support as a subcommittee. And there probably are other areas that we can support as a subcommittee. I mean, this is a lot of information, but it's general. And, I can't get behind it because I don't know any of the programs. I can support additional personnel in these areas. And so the question I'm really raising, if we're going to spend our time on this, and we're willing to have another meeting for a couple of hours focused on indicators, is what are the salient issues that you're looking for in terms of clarity and maybe support from EdSub?
So what I'm looking for, Bob, on this particular slide here, this slide 9, we've got 1,200 Chromebooks that'll be arriving this week, brand new Chromebooks. The first thing that I was told is, everybody's flat out trying to finish up with transportation and get ready for the start of the year with what we have in place. These will probably have to wait a period of time before we'll be able to set them up for everybody. On top of that, there's some other Chromebooks that we've ordered earlier and thought would be in sooner that are due any week now as well. We haven't been notified of any delivery date. So there's a potential to have a lot of Chromebooks coming in that we need to have set up, joined to the network and that, and it's just requiring bodies. It's a stressful time right now to pull people off of some projects that are only partway done to do other things, but it's the nature of the beast. The other thing that you should know about, because it potentially could have a cost to it, is the expanded internet bandwidth. So what we've done is we've calculated out for every teacher to be using one device to hold Google Meet or Seesaw meetings. And what we're finding out from going around the schools and seeing how people are using these is many teachers are using more than one device. They're using a Chromebook maybe to host the meeting. They're using their desktop to maybe, that's where they're housing the webcam and that's where they're presenting from. So we did not calculate in the bandwidth, the up and back bandwidth for every teacher having 2 connections to the internet to host a meeting. So that's a potential cost that could be in there. There's no grant I have that can support this. So this would be something within the budget. It's not an exorbitant cost, but Bob, you asked me what are the salient points on this. Those are the 2 that are standing out to me as a manager of the folks here of what I'm trying to deal with right now to set up how we're going to make this work.
Bob, I'd also add with your description about the teachers using the 2 devices, once the kids get back in schools, some of the teachers may be asking the kids to use devices during class. I know we're doing that at Algonquin, and I have found a dip at times for various reasons when I ask kids to get a device out, and that may be an issue as well. I'm thinking about the staffing issue, and I'm wondering, so that made me very sad to hear that we're going to have possibly boxes that will go just be in storage because we don't have enough staff to help get them prepared for distribution. And I'm wondering, and I hear what you're saying about having to expend, $200,000 on tech integration specialists is a large amount and a big ask when we don't know a lot. But I wonder about short-term stipend position for a month, a 2-month position of getting some people who have, whether it's expertise, and there are teachers out there who will, and probably already do, provide trainings. If you say, hey, we want you to do trainings on Pear Deck, and we're willing to pay you $1,000 to do this and run 10 sessions. Or can you come, the teachers that are tech savvy and setting up on that end, we will pay you $1,000, $2,000 to come in for this much time to get these out. I mean, can we do something like that? Because those are people in our district that might be able to help.
Christina, yeah, you're a solutions person, and we've already looked at those. We're doing some of that now. We're paying people. That's how we resolve this. Bob asked me what are the areas that I really wanted to focus on. It's a challenge. It's a challenge to get professional development. The other thing I have is that if I step back 10 feet and look at this, it's not just training on the platform. It's that ongoing support. It's that just-in-time support. Look, I got this presentation I'm trying to push out tomorrow using Pear Deck, and it's glitchy in this area. You need to help me. That's where you need someone who isn't tied down to teaching to be able to throw an hour or two at helping that one teacher to get their thing to work, or to revisit training in a school where maybe it wasn't as effective for whatever reason. In terms of the bandwidth, we took into account all the students using devices within the schools. So there's enough there, but if you added in every teacher using 2 devices, it might be that we're bumping into it occasionally. We try to stay at least a couple of percentage points, like 20, 30% above peak capacity, so that we don't really bump into that. It's a rare case. And we want it to be invisible, our internet access. We want it to be omnipresent, invisible, and robust. And that's just some of our concerns there. That's what I think an effective technology department is. They're almost invisible because they're just making stuff work all the time. I don't want you to go away thinking we're going to have thousands of Chromebooks sitting in storage for weeks on end. What I'm telling you is they're going to arrive this week, and we will not be setting them up this week. Everybody has enough things on their plate to just try to get us ready on other areas for the start of school. So we will be setting them up, but to me that's frustrating because I'm in there, I can see them when they come in, I'll see them, and then it's to know that they're not being put out right away for students and staff to use. Laura,
Bob and Burr has a question, and then
Yeah,
Laura, or Laura,
I
and
wanted
then
to
Bob.
circle back to Laura here. Laura, in terms of your question, we will have devices. So our goal is to put the new Chromebooks in the hands of students so they can be using them at home. We'll be collecting back Chromebooks that we've lent students. We'll be repopulating the carts that exist in the schools, so students will be able to have access to those if they don't bring the one that we give them back into school. Our ultimate goal with the new Chromebooks is to make sure that we're 1-to-1 in grades 6, 7, and 8. And then we would also put new Chromebooks then back into the elementary schools as well. When a student has a Chromebook and they're 1-to-1, the expectation, just like in the high school, is you're bringing the device into school with you. It's like your books, you bring it into school with you, and you use it at home as well.
So can I clarify that just a little bit more?
Sure.
So it sounds to me like the new devices are intended to be for distribution to students, and that the older devices that are currently out there are going to be coming back in to, as you said, repopulate the carts, right?
Yep.
I understand that there's also a number of Chromebooks that are currently inactive and due for repair.
Yep.
So my understanding is that my hope is that some of those get repaired and are able to be recirculated back into school. So so I guess my question is, the intention is especially for elementary school students, they are not going to be having to bring their own devices from home into school. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, but that's absolutely correct. The last thing we want is to have a family be nervous that this device that their son or daughter has might go to school, and is it going to be broken, or what's going to happen? That's not the expectation. The expectation is that we'll have carts available at school once we get all these Chromebooks in, and that's what the classroom teachers will be able to use. The classroom teacher doesn't have to worry about a student bringing in some device and maybe it doesn't work or can't access the network. We don't want any of those things to be in play.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. Chris, you said other people had questions there.
I think Bob, I don't know, Bob, are you?
Well, my question really was about timeline and who's responsible. So you have these 2,500 Chromebooks you got to get out, and obviously you're not getting. What I'm hearing is that Some of them are backups, and that's great. But do we have a timeline for when they will go out and who's responsible?
Bob, I don't have a timeline today because of the how stretched our staff is right now. But knowing this, and I can say this tonight, that with these devices coming in, an expected delivery of tomorrow for the first batch of them, we'll be on those things and be getting them out. And I imagine that maybe it's the week after the Thanksgiving break is where we would start to now do an effort where we're exchanging them. Like, here's your new device, bring in your old one, and you get this new one. And we'll probably start working in those middle grades to have that happen. Once we get the devices back, we'll clean them up, refurbish them, and then start to repopulate the carts and put those back out into all the schools.
Laura has a question. If Bob's done, I'll set. Are you set, Bob? Is that an answer for you? You good? Okay. Laura?
Yeah, real quick. I know we're talking about teachers having multiple devices and how they've had to problem solve to get the classroom to do what they need it to do. Has there been any discussion about, and again, this is a resource acquisition, is upgrading teacher Chromebooks to actual laptops that have greater capacity?
Yeah, there's only 2,400 of the new Chromebooks that are for students. The remaining of those, there's not a lot there, are for staff. And that's part of our upgrade and replacement plan for this year. So some people have 2-year-old, 1-year-old, 3-year-old Chromebooks. We're replacing the oldest ones that staff have. And that's part of our ongoing efforts here. If need be, if there's problems, if teachers need extra monitors, need help with things, we just, the end of last week, started to pull together our plans for teacher training on how to set up multiple monitors. There's a way through the Tech Help Center where staff can request, as well as parents can request help, but staff can request additional equipment. We're working with principals so they can get out into the principal communications to staff on how to make those requests, etc. Last two things I just wanted to mention. One is around social distancing. And so you understand a little bit, maybe in more detail. We used a tool from the Department of Education. When you use that tool, you put in the length and the width of the room. You put in how many adults are going to be in that room. You put in whether the teacher has 1 or 2 desks in there, etc. And then it will tell you what's the available space for students. You then tell it how many feet you want the desks apart, and it'll tell you how many desks can fit in the room. So every place that, in every classroom across the district, I went around with the principals and we looked at all the classrooms. We measured the distances in the room, the length and the width, and they told me about how many desks they wanted in there if they were going to teach about half the population. Many cases, we're able to do 6 feet. In some cases, we're only able to do 5 feet or 4 feet. Or in a few cases, we're only able to do 3 feet of distancing between desks. We did the same for the cafeterias. We used the tool for the cafeterias. And I want you to understand that we went above 6 feet. So there's 8 feet from the center of one seat to the center of the other. And the reason I went a little bit higher than 6 feet is the fact that we want to make sure that we have the desks in the cafeterias as far apart as possible, because students are going to have their masks off and will be eating in there. And so that's why we really wanted to err on that side of caution in there. It's also what the Department of Health at the federal level is, the federal the CDC, Center for Disease Control, was recommending was more than 6 feet of spacing. And in the tool itself, it talks about 8 feet between center of seat to center of seat is ideal. So that's what we shot for.
Bob, only because I'm sure someone's going to ask, if we had done the 6 feet of spacing at the high school, would we have been able to do lunch?
No, it gains us 6 feet between, from the center of seat to center of seat is actually 4 feet between the desks itself, from the edge of the one desk to the edge of the other. And that would not have worked there. So it wouldn't have, based on the bigger kids, the size of the desk, etc. the high school always would have needed to use more than one space for lunch. It might have got us, Sherry, from not having to use 3 spaces to maybe using just 2 spaces for lunch. The other problem with the high school is the number of tiers of lunch and the amount of custodians we would have had present to clean in between tiers. So if we did this sort of split tiers, maybe we fill the cafeteria, and instead of waiting for that lunch to end before more kids come down, halfway through that lunch, another group comes down and they fill the second space. Maybe it's the small gym. And then that first cafeteria now is done. They move off, another one comes in. But what you have to have is a dedicated custodial staff to the cafeteria, a dedicated staff to the small gym. So they're all cleaning in there in that small amount of time between those sessions coming in, those tiers of lunch. It's pretty complicated once we got in and started to dig into that.
Bob, in the classrooms that only have 3 feet, there's obviously more risk at 3 feet versus 6 feet. Will parents know that their child's in a whatever class, history classroom, that it only has 3 feet of distancing?
I'm not sure that information is being shared. Now, think of a high school, for instance, in the schedules. Maybe you're in room 213 and that's got 6 feet. Now you're in room 205 and that's got 3 feet. Maybe the class, we're still moving some classes around in the high school, and we're also adjusting the number of students in different cohorts in the high school. So I don't think any of that has been shared out yet because it's not set in stone just yet. In an elementary school, most of the classrooms, in fact, I think almost all the classrooms, a few science classrooms are a little different, but most of the classrooms in the elementary level are 6 feet of social distancing between seats. As pictured, that's a Central Tree picture, by the way, over there. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, I thought we were going for that 6 feet and that kids would be in an overflow space if their classroom couldn't accommodate them somehow. I just think that's really important. I'm sure that you do as well, especially as we get into these winter months. But we're getting down to 6:54 for time, and we need to close out so that we can get to our other meeting. But before we do that, I wanted to see about our next meeting date, and because I don't know, Bob, if you have your calendar and you're able to say like, hey, this is a day that I'm available with our group here, that might be the best way for us to go about scheduling so we can do the district indicators. We can set aside, I think we had talked about 1.5 hours or 2 hours to do that.
Yep.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, I'm ready to go.
If we can choose another Monday, I think that would be preferable for me.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So next Monday is the facilities subcommittee and facilities and security, just in case you're on that, if we were looking at Mondays.
Is anyone on that? Nope. No one is. Do you have to be at that, Bob? Or
no, I think I'm just filling some numbers in on a chart for that. And I'm driving the people around to the schools during the day, so I don't have to be at that.
I do have a conflict, but it's not essential. I think, yeah, it's not an essential conflict. I'd prefer a different date, but I could live with it if we had to do it that date.
Well, I was just picking the next Monday, the 16th. We certainly could go out further.
what's the next one? The
23rd is the next one.
23rd.
I think this is a conversation that we need to have, and I'd rather have it sooner rather than later.
You guys, most of you on board then for the 16th? And Linda, we'll see. I wish I had conflicts that were not essential.
I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, it's not as, it's an organization that I'm, they're having it's an organization that I'm somewhat affiliated with is having its annual gala online.
That sounds fun.
Well, yes, it will be fun. So which is why I'd like to go, but
yes. We give you permission to go, Linda.
No. School committee takes precedence. Absolutely. School committee, I'm trying to think if I have anything else. Can you hang on 1 second while because I have 2 conflicting calendar invites in here. So
You're so popular.
no, I'm committed is what I am. Hang on, I'm looking for Rebecca's
go ahead and
latest updated posting. Hang on a second.
If we were looking at a time, Bob Burlow, would it be like 6 to 8? Is that like a good time for people? Maybe that allows Linda to still go to a gala.
Yeah, that's up to you guys to decide. 6:30. So you guys decide what we're going to start. I can make it work.
So let's see, facilities. Yeah. If it was 6 to 8, that would be better because I could then sneak off at 8 o'clock and go to the other event.
I'm up for that. Are you guys fine with that? The 6 to 8? Okay, 6 to 8. Deirdre, are you good with that? Okay.
I was only if we're invited.
There, but if, I want you to go to
contribute. I'm sure that they'd be happy to have you.
All right, so
6 o'clock is okay. It's just a little tight for me, but I'll make it work. It's fine.
Okay. All right, so thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, so we'll do district indicators. That will be our focus. And we just had Bob Inver made a motion to adjourn because we are over time now. So motion to adjourn. Someone second that.
Second.
Roll call vote. Member Bennett?
Yes.
Member Haber?
Yes.
Member Imber?
Yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Yes.
Member Longleel?
Yes.
Member Shapiro?
Yes.
And me, I say yes. So we are adjourned. Thank you very much. See you in a couple minutes. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.